Rock and roll. Kia ora, everybody. What's up? It is Robett. Welcome to Robett Live. We've for two people in the technology landscape. I've extremely managed to stuff this first 15 minutes up. So my apologies, ladies and gentlemen. Introducing to you EY Entrepreneur of the Year, absolute weapon of all things business and all things cool. Katherine Corich, how are you?
I'm good. Kia ora. I'm very well, thank you.
We made it. We're talking about isolation. We're talking about the fact that you're on the Kapiti coast. It's probably a bit more chill environment than it is right in the middle of Auckland. How's the setup? How's the vibe? How's the family? How's the space been for the last couple of weeks for you?
Do you know, it's been okay. I mean, it's tough times for everyone globally, but I think if we double down and do what we do best and try and make the most of the situation, then there are some positives. So lots of walks, lots of bike rides. I'm primary caregiver for my mum at the moment. She's on the high vulnerable list, so it's a real pleasure to be caring for her. And actually, I was pleased that I got sort of caught here in a sense in the lockdown.
When did you make it over? Because obviously you travel a shit ton to were you based in London? London or the inside of it?
Oxford, just out of Oxford.
Got it. My brother's just rolled in with his dog Arlo, who's a well-trained, epic German Shepherd / awesome pup. What's up, Arlo?
Oh, lovely.
Yeah,
Would have bought my dog if I knew we were having dogs at the
but
party.
he's ridiculously well trained. He's on point, so it's mellow. How often are you traveling between? What's your movement?
I do about 4 trips a year between New Zealand and the UK. So we lived in the UK for 13 years, came back and have been based here for the last year doing the commutes in the other direction. So about 4 trips a year. I have board meetings in the UK and I bookend month-long trips with board meetings. So it's, pretty busy schedule.
I guess I'll start here. How do you think what grade would you give New Zealand as a collective of how we've navigated our way so far to date compared to other places around the world? How do you feel we've gone?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in comparison to other places around the world, I think we're doing remarkably well. We are obviously an island nation, which is a real advantage in terms of being able to isolate more easily. We're a smaller population. Again, another positive in terms of that ability to lock down. I think we've had a really good response from a really good leadership, actually, not even response, great leadership from the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Health. So I think from a health perspective, we're in really good shape. There are some very difficult moments, and some families are really going to be suffering right now. But in New Zealand, I think we're probably in one of the better places in the world.
Timing-wise, it's very clear that they made moves really fast to address the health and safety from the medical side first, and then obviously next came the business wave of what they were doing for employees. Now they're coming and helping with employers, with the banks backing up to 80% of it. There's a whole bunch of things that are happening. When we get to this next phase, how do you see this starting to restart again? Like, what are the levers that you'll be looking for that you'd like to see happen first? How, in a dream scenario, do you think this plays out as it starts to come out from 4 down to 0 or whatever it will be? What does the timing in your head look like, or what do you think it should be?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would like to see us stay in lockdown until the Ministry of Health and the experts are absolutely comfortable that we're ready to leave alert level 4. There's a lot going on in the background, so I don't see it as we're in level 4, then we go into level 3. I think that what we're seeing right now is there's this incredible collective energy. There's New Zealanders from all walks of life coming together, having their meetings by Zoom, by Microsoft Teams, whatever the method is, and actually that creative energy is bringing lots of innovation to the table. So I'm involved, as you will be, and many of us are in calls and meetings every day where the innovation is incredible. So there's two parts, I think, to think about. One is there is a lot of vulnerability in New Zealand at the moment, and we've got a government will to address the people who are at most need. So the challenge we've got is reaching everyone and making sure that people don't suffer beyond what they need to suffer because they're suffering in silence. So I think the collective public and community response to helping people has been phenomenal as well. So we need to see more of that, and we need to see entrepreneurs working with communities and so on. And then you look at how do we come out of it economically? And I think this is a one moment in time opportunity to actually rethink how we've been living, to rethink how we work as organizations, and just look at what are the things we've been talking about the planet needing us to address for so long: inequality, injustice, climate emergency. All of those opportunities are opportunities. They're challenges, but they're opportunities because they're problems to solve. And now's a real opportunity to start thinking about how we solve those problems.
Yeah, it's an interesting one that you said the word, like the forced innovation type thing that a lot of these businesses have been kind of demanded to execute within minutes and hours, not months and years. And, we were talking with Vic Crone, CEO of Callahan, a couple of weeks ago now, and she said, it just goes to show that when people actually want to do something, things can move fast. And it just kind of makes you. It's almost like the governments and corporates and councils have overnight become like startup hustle entrepreneurs to create at speed.
I love that description. It's great.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's quite cool because I could tell you can always sense energy from either business or organizations with communications and action.
Yeah.
When you're hustling and you're on the go and shit, you're just like, go. And then all of a sudden he's like, yep, I'm just going to talk to so-and-so. Yep, going to knock this out. Yep, boom, boom. Yep, go. And then the emails are getting shorter, calls are getting faster. And it's in a weird way, like if you're an entrepreneur, you understand speed. If you're traditionally potentially in a big organization, you're probably freaking out to the pace of how everything's happened, obviously that it's had to, but exactly to your point, a lot of these people are going to be sitting at the end of this going, why do we need to be so slow? Why can't we? There's going to be a lot of why can't we, I think, come out of it, which is actually, I think it's really, it gets me excited when other people are expanding the horizons of what potentially is possible. When you look at the biggest opportunities for New Zealand coming out the back of this, potentially at a macro to the world, where do you think New Zealand could play? Like, obviously, it feels like, we don't want to jump to the gun on the medical side, but it feels that from a health perspective, medically, we're pretty far. We're doing quite well, and all things considered. How do you think this plays out? That New Zealand could be louder to the world, or where there's potential a mass upside, which either governments or big corporates or whatever should potentially look at? Where's the sweet spot?
That's a really big question, because I think we've got an opportunity to showcase a response and showcase it as a really joined up whole system thinking response. So if you think about the way that New Zealand has collectively come together, right from the leadership at PM level through to the leadership actually that's been shown by the opposition as well, in terms of really supporting that we're all in this together. And there's been some good appropriate challenge, but the key message outwards has been, we've been working as one country, which I think is really powerful. And then when you blur the boundaries, and you just did it earlier, and I loved the way you described that kind of hustle, the entrepreneurial hustle that we're seeing in government, in local councils, regional councils. Now, we do need to still maintain that appropriate level of governance so that we know that our democracy is working as it should. But when you've got this kind of hustle happening where everyone is saying we're all on the same page, then it's fertile ground for innovation. And that's, I guess that's what I see the opportunity is for New Zealand. We are going to need to reinvent our tourism industry, without a doubt. We're going to need to revolutionise our communication travel networks with the world. So in terms of aviation and cruise and so on. Sorry, I can see some sun shining in on my face right now. And if you think about it, we've got that opportunity to just bring it to life, to say, hey, we could be the first country to really look at modes of transport that are much more sustainable and make that a key part of our tourism strategy. Lots of ideas like that. We can start to address some of the issues that we have that are in the system in New Zealand, some of the inequalities we've got, and actually say, right, we've got this, we own it, we're going to fix these things. We're not going to keep turning a blind eye or saying that the machine is moving too slowly for us to fix it. We need to grab hold of them, and the partnership of entrepreneurs and policymakers and great health workers and all the people in that ecosystem, we can work together in a new way because we've found that we know how to do that.
Yeah, it gets you excited when you start to think about how people as a collective approach problems, but also I feel for many they've seen an entirely new world of the way that business can operate with digital systems and process and speed and comms and all the rest of it. And like a friend of mine works in the real estate game, and he was saying, all of his 100 whatever staff, he's been trying to get them on Microsoft Teams for a year and a half, and then all of a sudden within 24 hours have kind of gone down that route. I like the idea about reimagining what could be. Rod Drew put an article out in the newsroom talking about a couple of things which he thought would be good for New Zealand, and using it as a. I always have this thought about this idea of moment to movement, where it's like a moment happens, but then when you use creative thinking and forced, how do you turn that moment into a movement? Because moments happen all the time, but there's only a few movements. Right, and that's usually because there's either lack of action and strategy and purpose. But clearly, we're all aligned with the purpose of something to try and make New Zealand a better place. Well, there's all these things that are aligning, and then you kind of like, what does that new momentum for the new world of the new New Zealand look like? And that's kind of a great opportunity for reimagining, and then almost redefining who we are and what we represent to the world. That's kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah,
cool.
And I think a way to maybe look at it is, if we're ever told we've only got a limited time on the planet, we see people really bringing up, their bucket list and saying, I've got 5 things on my bucket list. I've got to do it with urgency. And I kind of see that we've got a planet bucket list opportunity. We've got the possibility to say, if we all listed the 5 things that really annoy us, is it injustice? Is it inequality? Is it, I don't know, whatever it might be, period poverty? It might be the entrepreneurial experience, whatever it is. Let's pick those 5. And I think if we lined all New Zealanders' 5 bucket list for the planet and for people ideas together, we'd be pretty much aligned. So why don't we all move in the same direction with those? I mean, imagine if we could get 4 million people, 5 million people behind the concept that we do not want injustice in New Zealand anymore. We don't want to have what we know exists as inequality between peoples of our nation. Let's deal with it.
So what would you get cast the magical Katherine spell over New Zealand and do the little dangles. What would the first thing you'd reimagine for this country would be? What would be first off the hit list?
The first off the hit list would be inequality. How do we ensure that all New Zealand children and all New Zealand families have a fair and kind life? And I mean, that's not to say that life is always kind, because it isn't, and we know that. But how do we actually, as a nation, come together and say all our families will be housed, all our children will go to school, and they will have have that opportunity to achieve whatever is their greatest potential. And again, that might be really different for different people. I mean, one of the things I've had to learn being an entrepreneur who never stops, I never switch off, is actually that not everyone's like that. And in fact, my children are always saying to me, Mum, would you just switch off? And often they'll say, hey, listen, we love you, but we don't want to be you. And I've had to realize that, I've had to learn, as we do from our kids, but I've had to realize that different people have different ways of expressing the energy, but we can still have a collective movement in the same direction.
Yeah, I like that. The definitely the gears of, that's why, like, it's quite funny, because exactly that thing, the energy of kind of the crazies attract the crazy, because you feel like you've found yourself, you know, like you're just like, shit, yeah. Like I was talking to a buddy the other day, he was like, you know, Sunday, it was 10 at night or some shit, whatever. And he's like, oh yeah, bro, it's just like a Tuesday for me. Like, like there's no concept of what normal, or like your world morphs differently when you see the world differently, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
hey, it does.
Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I woke up at 4 a.m. and kind of, no, don't laugh. I'm a pretty good sleeper normally, but I woke up at 4 a.m.
You had an idea?
I did. And what it was an email I'd got yesterday where a friend of mine who I've been working with for years on, she's a researcher in infant maternal health care in New Zealand, a fantastic GP and researcher. And she's been working for years, Dr. Bev Lawton, she's been working for years to try and equalize access to services to all communities. And I woke up at 4 a.m. She sent me an email yesterday and she said, are we going to do this? And that's all she said. Are we going to do this? And I read the whole email trail that came before it. And it was full of data and full of information about pre-existing inequalities that exist in access to services for various communities in New Zealand. And when I woke up at 4 a.m., I was like, yes, we're going to do this. And then I had to take action. And I'll tell you a secret. I was going to go back to sleep until I remembered I had this interview with you. So then I had to stay up.
So you've been up since 4?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of similar. I always have my phone next to me, and every time I always have like stream thoughts, right? And like I'll instantly pop up, write down, boom, knock out. And then I've trying to get more balance into my life. And so one of the things I've decided to do is put my phone out in the lounge on charge and not actually have a device with me in the room. And then, so now I've got to put, like, stuff it. I think I need a pen and paper. And then I'm thinking, well, shit, I don't have a light in there. So I'll just draw blind. I'll be fine. Because after you've got to get it out. So maybe I was going to ask, because obviously you're, you know, EY Entrepreneur Flipping Weapon of the Year. So mindset around giving it a go, right? You know, I call it taking the leap. There's always this mental bridge or barrier. In your experience, wins and losses and your approach to the mindset of what it takes to take that leap and jump, how do you describe it for someone that doesn't, that sees you but doesn't get you?
Okay. So the thing to think about is, a lot of people wake up and say, I want to be an entrepreneur, or I can't be an entrepreneur because I haven't got an idea, or I'm not smart enough, or whatever it is that they put in front of themselves as the barrier. And my experience of entrepreneurship, and also of mentoring other entrepreneurs and watching those who are incredibly successful, is they actually just had a really good idea. And it was an idea they believed in. They didn't know whether others would actually believe in it when they first started to nurture that idea, but they said, hey, there's a problem. It needs solving. I've got an idea of how to solve it. And it emerges from there. And then people start to believe in you, and you become a storyteller, I guess, to share that belief with people. And you get to see over time whether that idea's got legs. And if I think back to when I started Systock, I never intended to be an entrepreneur. It was the last thing on my mind. I had a French degree. which is a bit of another story. It was so I could go skiing on a Friday. And then I trained as a commercial pilot. And suddenly I'm running this company and thinking, but I don't know anything about business. And what had happened was I was taking the principles of aviation, which is whole system thinking, that whole understanding of end-to-end processes, training by simulation. So you don't leave anything to chance. You do everything by simulation multiple times before the real thing. And we really think about human factors and how decision-making happens in the event of an emergency or in on the flight deck. So I was kind of playing with those principles, and I was working at the time in the London Stock Exchange because I actually needed to self-fund my flying. In those days, the only path for a female pilot was to believe in yourself and self-fund. So I was doing that, and then one day I just said to my boss in passing, do you know, there's a smarter way of doing this. We were on a big IT project, and it just felt that if we applied the principles of aviation, understanding the end-to-end process, as I said earlier, then we would have much more clarity and structure to what we were doing, and it would happen faster. And it kind of just grew from there. I mean, it really was, and it was an idea that had some legs, and it grew into a business. And I mean, we're global. We're operating all around the world. And sometimes I pinch myself and say, did I just talk to someone in Kazakhstan, or did I just talk to someone in Mexico and they work in this company? But it's almost as if it's got a life that's so much bigger than me now. It's beyond me, because other people believe in it in a way that that I could never have imagined or dreamed. But I guess it was because it filled a gap. And I think in New Zealand right now, we have got so many of those opportunities. We've got opportunities to create environmentally friendly, sustainable solutions to some of our really wicked problems. And we've got all this talent out there. And actually, we've got a government that is saying right now, let's find solutions and make this happen together.
Yeah, it's a mega link with it, because it kind of two parts. One, I think when you follow the passion first, the byproduct is the brand or the optics of what entrepreneurship is, opposed to chasing the byproduct of, I want the optics of being an entrepreneur, but I don't know what I'm going to do yet. And one is always snowboarding. I talk about it a bunch. Obviously, I came from the snowboard world. I loved snowboarding. I love snowboarding, and everything else, the travel and the parties and the sponsors and the money and the blah and all the cool shit, that was the byproduct. But it was very clear when someone came in chasing the byproduct because they didn't love the thing. You know, that passion to get up at 6 in the morning and go do whatever, or just hike to the almost die every day. But the second part I was going to just jump in on there, I think you're right, is there's almost feels like there's a government and corporate responsibility / new direction of where they're going to take all of us. They're almost going to be incentivized to fund this new world. They're going to be incentivized to take these bolder risks that they always wanted for their business. They're going to be more incentivized and driven for a bigger purpose, not just bucks. And it feels that Kiwis deep down, even those that exist in corporate world, have the earning to do more that isn't just the dollars, but the framework of what they play in is driven for things but potentially aren't what's right in their pure core, maybe from those that I can that I know. And mate, what a good time to use that moment to be brave, to go after all those things, right? What do you think's holding Kiwis back from all this good shit, right? Like now we have a moment. We have billions of dollars that can be coming in the mix to help drive things. We've got people with a million ideas. There's all this great momentum to try and make this new world. Obviously, there's gnarly challenges and all the rest, but what's holding Kiwis back for the new New Zealand?
I think it's a togetherness, a real togetherness, and in the way that, I don't know, maybe it was of yesteryear, and I don't mean to sort of bring it back to the past, but what I mean by that is we've let our tall poppy kind of belief define entrepreneurs in a way. And yet if I look at all the entrepreneurs that I know and work with, they're seriously good people. And they may have done incredibly well on a global stage, but actually what defines them is the people they were before they became entrepreneurs and the things they want to change. So it'd be really fantastic if we could kind of get that possibility where people say those entrepreneurs are people who actually started out just like me, and I could be one of them, and maybe one of them would mentor me. So that's one aspect of it. And the other aspect is, I think that the people who are living a comfortable life need to I'm going to get told off for saying this out loud, aren't I?
Go,
but
kill him.
I think the people who are leading a comfortable life, who aren't looking out beyond their community, really need to. And
yeah, that's not bad. That's real talk. It's a perfect example. Buddy mine's new young buck on a big board. I said, yo, how's it going, bro? Like, is it like some real shit, blah, blah? He's like, man, they're not hungry. They're too comfortable, too complacent. And I was like, nah, bro, blah, blah, blah. He's like, trust me. I've seen them in their eyes. Life's good. They're comfy. They're safe. It's not that fight to change. And then I kind of got gutted for a second, because I thought, shit, they're not brave enough to try and go and do. You're not saying anything bad. It's the reality of a lot of us, because they get comfy. It's when you get caught slipping, and the young buck comes up and just goes hard. And that's what my buddy is. Okay, so maybe on that, what advice would you give leaders now, like right now?
Keep the courage. Keep the courage. Stay with the lockdown if it's the right thing to do, and let the creative energy keep bubbling in the background. The key thing is that we make sure through this period of lockdown that we are identifying who's vulnerable and we're getting help to them. So that energy has to be driven from the top, and I think we've got that happening, but we need more of it. And if communities are struggling, they need to be calling out, and even making comments on your live show, so that we can kind of find out where everyone is. But it's keep the courage, because if you look around the world, you're sitting in the US. I have children in the UK. The world's quite a different place out there. And just to give an example, out of my my SysDoc team and friends in the UK, over the past weekend, we have experienced seven people dying as a direct result of COVID-19. Now, that's the grandparent generation. It's a generation that, if we don't take care of them and recognise the gift of depth in families and the beauty of all ages in society, we risk losing an entire generation. So, New Zealand does need to have leadership courage. I believe we've got it at the moment. And then let's let the collective energy that we've got happening now turn into a real force for good, and get some repeatability and scalability to what we're doing. So if, for example, we come up with a great new way of working in a particular area, let's say in healthcare, we're forced through this period of lockdown to find smarter ways to get healthcare professionals into communities, or we've got issues with getting equipment to people. Let's get smarter and get it there. Let's make it happen, because the entrepreneurs will work, as will all business people and the public sector. I couldn't single out any sector of New Zealand at the moment that's not pulling their weight. I think we've got an incredible collective energy going on.
Yeah, repeatability and scalability. That's one of the things I've been thinking about. Is at the end of this, I just hope that it doesn't get just fragmentedly aligned, and the same thing happen like with charities and shit, and you got a million monkeys doing the same shit, and you're like, guys, you're building the same cake 10,000 different times. like collective approach to, I think, communication from it. I think it feels, I don't think, it feels that needs to be almost government led for some big initiatives that people can then gravitate towards. Because if usually when people, the doers don't look to see what else other people are doing, the doers just go and do. There's like, stuff it, I'm just going to build this thing, let's go do it. I just hope that there's a massive collective opportunity to find better, solutions for the problems which all of it had. Yeah, I like that repeatability, scalability. It's cool.
Yeah, well, it's a mantra I live by, because if you think about the aviation industry, it has repeatability and scalability. I mean, obviously the planes are grounded right now, but in normal circumstances, it moves millions of people around the world, and there are millions of aircraft movements in complex machines flown by people with increasing levels of automation. And you couldn't achieve all of that without that repeatability, scalability, and alignment in terms of processes. One of the things that I've been really keen to do in aviation for some time, and which is a space I do play in, is actually say the great things we've done as an industry, let's use moments so that we can innovate and actually come up with an industry that's much kinder to the planet. And it's that repeatability, scalability. Find something that works and then lift it, shift it, and scale it. The only thing I think I would challenge on your on your summary a moment ago is you said maybe it needs to be big government initiatives. I think it needs to be partnership. I think community has to play a really big role in that. And if you think about, say, a charity, I agree with you, if there are 30 charities doing the same thing in a small, similar area, and you're measuring good actions rather than impact, you may not get the transformation you need. But if you actually do something really well and you're measuring impact, that's the key. Any charity you're involved in, you have to measure impact and outcomes, not outputs. You have to measure outcomes. If I set out to reduce child sex exploitation, or if I set out to reduce harm of any sort in families, or to reduce poverty, then you have to measure, did you make a material impact in what you set out to do? And I think we don't do enough of that. So if we could, within the New Zealand context, bring our community service delivery partners together, and we're all working to singing from the same book, hymn sheet, if you like, then we've got much more of an opportunity to really make change happen at community level. But it's so important we keep the community owning and delivering what's right in the community.
So yeah, it's interesting, right? So how can small pockets with the same alignment get on the same hymn book with a hymn sheet? What does that look like in the real world?
Well, there's a technology opportunity, isn't there?
No, it's that thing of like, once it's like we're in high school and you think about who's going to have what parties on what days. It was like, oh yeah, no, Steve's party's on the Saturday. It's like, okay, cool. Everyone then goes to the Steve's party. But then when no one knows what's going on, it's like there's a comms shit. You're probably right. There is probably some tech thing in there. So if you were to do your entrepreneurial journey again, and you're talking about repeatability, scalability, what would you have done? If you were to do it again, would you have done it the same journey, the same time, because you loved the journey? Or would you have done it faster, smarter, quicker, and had a bigger win faster, but not experience the rest of the journey? Like, would you have done the same thing? Not to win for the money, to win for the journey. What would you have done?
I'm happy with the journey.
Yeah, and see that? Yeah, cool. Why?
I think why it's a really important question to me, and I think it's top of mind for a lot of entrepreneurs. When the company started growing and it was clearly gaining momentum, and it was a service that organizations needed, I realized, I was quite young at the time, I realized that I wanted to have children, and I looked around for role models who worked in technology, digital, IT, who were maybe 10, 15 years older than me. And I kind of looked around to say, how many kids have they got? What do their families look like? Is their life normal, or did they give themselves to the job? And I couldn't find really enough role models that made me say I want to be like those people. So I sat down with my team and said, hey, we're going to have to invent a new way of working. And so we did that. And if you look at where we've gone over what's now 33 years, we've got incredible leadership. So I'm chairman now. I'm not in a day-to-day role. The company's run by CEOs who are far more competent than I am in their incredible leadership of the company. They like me, they're mums, and we've got mums and dads. And I think the key thing is I couldn't change anything, and I wouldn't want to change anything, because we've lived lives authentically. And often people say to me, could the company be bigger? And yeah, it could probably be 10 times bigger if I'd made different choices. And actually, it's still got potential to be 10 times bigger. The thing you've got to do is you've got to say, what sits comfortably with me as a human being, and the people I love, and the people in my orbit, and the people in my team, what's doable and realistic for us, and then you live with it. And I guess I've got an incredible husband who often says to me, how much is enough? And it's a really good question, because actually I love big numbers in a company, but I don't love them because I have a desperate need for personal wealth. I love them because I love the game. I love the chase. I love making a difference. And I think that if you have resources, then you can use those resources for good. So I think everyone has to ask themselves that question, how much is enough? And that applies to everything you do in life, and try and live in a way that you can be the most wholesome person you can be.
Shit, that was good. I'm going to start calling you Auntie Kath now. That was awesome. That was like half like motivational, half mum talk, half like CEO shit. Hell yeah. That was awesome. That was the perfect answer too, because people have asked me, and I've talked to other people about it, and usually the answer is, I would have done this, got there faster, bigger, whatever. But it's driven on growth for a flex, which is like not as experience is intangible, and those things create those moments, and those moments are the actual things that matter. And you flipping get it. It's dope. All right. What a good chat. Shit, chair.
It's been fun. Thank you.
That was mega. Really cool. So what's on the plan now? You're going to hang out, do the fam thing?
Do you mean today or in general?
Oh, let's say today.
Today, I'm going to FaceTime my granddaughter and sing her nursery rhymes. And I sing really badly, by the way, but anyway, she loves it. And then I'm going to go for a bike ride. And then I'm going to go and give my mum lunch. And then I'm going to work.
There you go. That's awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Auntie Kath. Appreciate it.
That's all right. I'll be awesome. Auntie Kath anytime.
Man, Auntie Kath's keeping it real. Appreciate it, and congrats on all your amazing success. It's so cool. Like, just the when you saw no one that looked like you, that rolled like you, that was in a lane that you then filled up. I call them breadcrumbs. You put breadcrumbs for other people who are into the same thing. They have never seen anything before, and they see that, and you may never know it, but I can guarantee you people have seen those breadcrumbs that you've created and actually changed a lot of the tangents of their life with where they could go. I can guarantee it, 100%. Breadcrumbs.
And lots of people have done it before me in different ways. So
for doing your piece.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, and I will link up with you soon.
Okay.
Thanks,
cheers. Bye.
See ya.
Yeah.
Auntie Kath. Shit, that was good banter. Great. So good. Sarah Kane says, kia ora, should we be moving away from charities framework and create an open marketplace for doing good work and give users whānau more say over what they want? That's a great idea. Sarah says, don't mean to push diversity, but it's vital. Please know who you mean when we say we in the same hymn sheet, that there are other worldviews. Totally agree. What I think we're 100% going to is the fact is if everyone's on the same page with what we're trying to build as a collective for the new New Zealand or whatever it is, it makes a whole lot more sense than, for example, the 14,000 whatever charities when there's 1,000 different double ups for whatever. So no, good yarns, good feedback. Few in the mix here, mega. Awesome, Auntie Kath, entrepreneur. Google her and all the stuff that she's done. It's pretty amazing and incredible. Enjoy the rest of the day, team. See you soon. Peace.